Hello, everyone, and welcome to part 2 of our doubleheader this Monday on Grid Network with another episode of Grid Live Encore. I'm Ben Schneider, as always, joined by Brandon Crossland, and look who else decided to join the party, Joe Samniego, our fearless leader back from Portland International Raceway this weekend. Brandon, I'll start with you. How are things going on your end?
Oh, going well, and I'm really glad that we got another weekend in Portland for the Grid Network, and glad to have our, like you said it, our fearless leader, Mr. Joe Samniego.
Joe, welcome back, first of all, from PIR, and apologize. Forgot to take the...
He gets another intro run. It's okay. He gets another run of the music.
Oh, man, it's been a long day. I've gotten a bunch of clips up on the YouTube channel. Did a whole another hour and a half long show, so forgive me if I'm a little frazzled here. But, Joe, welcome back. Like I said, what can you tell us from Portland? I mean, obviously, we've got a lot to get into here, but how was the trip?
A lot of fun. Great weekend at the track. Like you said, a little frazzled as well. Just long days working, ton of walking around that racetrack, but a ton of racing to talk about today. Very excited. It was just great opportunity. And, of course, a big thank you to everyone to make this possible in the Grid Network team.
Absolutely. And thank you, as always, to our Patreon supporters, Colin Deschelle, Mark, Robin, and David. Your support is what allowed Joe to go out there this weekend. And as you can see, we have a goal of $500 a month so that we can continue to do that on a more regular basis in 2024 and beyond. So if you like what you see tonight, if you've liked what you've seen all weekend from the Grid Network, consider investing like these fine folks have in our Patreon. Or if you'd rather make a one-time donation, you can visit the Buy Me a Coffee link in our description box below. Or we have Super Chats enabled now on YouTube, so there's another option to do that as well. And of course, follow us on all our social media platforms, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, all the rest. Subscribe to us here on YouTube. Join us on our journey to 1,000 subscribers and beyond. Now, we've got a lot of racing to cover. We'll get into the Portland stuff here in just a little bit. But first, we have a champion in Formula 3. Gabriele Bortoleto won the championship after taking P2 in the sprint race. I apologize. Those are the feature results here, the sprint results. You see Bortoleto there in second. Franco Colapinto took the win, surviving the lap 1 chaos that saw Paul Aron lose control heading into turn 1. And we'll take you through the back third of the sprint race results there as well. However, the the sprint race winner had a lot less luck in the feature. Colapinto ended up retiring from the race. Johnny Edgar took his maiden win in the feature, while Prema clinched the team's championship. This was the final weekend for Formula 3, so their season is all wrapped up and done. Congratulations again to Bortoleto on the championship. Now we move on to Formula 2. Frederick Vesti is in a fierce title fight with Deo Porcher, and his weekend got off to a great start in the sprint race, taking the win took the lead on the opening lap after Ralph Boschung locked up and missed the first corner. However, like in Formula 3, it was not nearly as good luck in the feature race for the sprint winner. Vesti ended up retiring from the race after he crashed out on the opening lap. There were a bunch of accidents in the F2 race. Fortunately, everybody appears to be okay, but Oliver Behrman was the one who was able to take the feature win. Theo Porcher picked up a podium finish there. You see the strong third-place run. He closed in on the driver's title due to Vesti's feature retirement. He now has a full features race worth of points heading into the final round of the season over his closest championship rival. So it would appear, if he has a clean weekend, Theo Porcher has one hand on the F2 championship. So we will keep our eyes on what happens there. In the meantime, let's shift over to Moto 3 and Moto 2. Joe, I understand you have some stuff to tell us about what happened in those series this weekend.
Yeah, they were in Barcelona, Catalonia, Spain. Of course, busy weekend. A lot of racing over there. Starting with Moto 3, we saw a great race. 18 laps for Moto 3. Ivan Ortala, he was the pole sitter. Ana Carrasco, she was the lone female in the race. Of course, she's been racing from Moto E to Moto 3 now. Not exactly having the best season. However, for the pole sitter, this is going to be a very challenging race because in this track, and especially with Moto 3, we know the slipstream is very tight. For the American fans that probably don't watch this, think of what we see with NASCAR and the super speedways, or Formula E at Portland, where you have that big pack of racing, the slipstream, a lot of passing. However, the first half of the race, there was only three lead changes. We saw Dennis Ansu, he led the first couple of laps, kept it going for a while. Then Massier led the next two until David Alonso took the lead. So in total, we only had 3 lead changes. But then once we got to the last 2 laps, business picked up just like what you anticipate in these type of pack racing. But this time with motorcycles, Daniel Hidalgo, he led starting the last lap, the points leader. But then he went down the last lap. he was done for. He managed to get up, keep the bike going, but was not able to get the win, get points. Last corner, David Munoz. He was fighting for the lead, 3 wide. He went down. This allowed David Alonso to take the win, 700th of a second over second place. And of course, 3 different winners for Moto3. Now going over to Moto2, where we still have the same points leader with Pedro Acosta. He scored 10 points today. So overall, everything was looking great for him. But Jake Dixon, he was on the pole. He was looking forward to trying to get another win. And sure enough, he did that. But one of the big things we saw was Aaron Canet. He was trying to get his first win. And you talk about somebody that's like a Harry Gant or a Casey Kane, 11 times second place finishes. He was leading that last lap, but then here comes Dixon again. He was pushing really hard the second to last corner, was gaining on him, but down the last corner, he slid, managed to keep control of the bike. But unfortunately, he is now a 12-time second place finisher for Jake Dixon, a 3rd time he got the win. So overall, big weekend for Dixon. He gained some points, but still, Pedro Acosta, the points leader right there in Moto2, and just phenomenal races. Highly recommend it, especially if you watch MotoGP on NBC. Consider MotoGP's app is the equivalent of getting like the Xfinity Trucks and Cup Series all in one app. You get Moto3, Moto2, and MotoGP. Great racing overall, and of course they're going to be back with MotoGP in Misano for the Italian Grand Prix.
Thank you for that, Joe. And now the moment everybody's been waiting for, your coverage from Portland International Raceway. Let's talk about USF 2000 first. Simon Sykes wrapped up this year's championship in the first race of the weekend. A very different weekend compared to last year when Miles Rowe entered with the lead and lost it on the final race. This was a season with 6 wins and 14 podium finishes. He came in and got it done in his 4th season here. Joe, he switched to Pabst Racing this year. Do you think that was the difference compared to his first 3 years in being able to do what he did this season?
I think it makes a difference, not so much in the equipment. We know always equipment has a role, but in this level, supposedly, it's not that big of a difference. But having that support of a team like Pabst, he was very much appreciative of getting the call, the opportunity to work with the Pabst team. He said it felt like a family. And we got to also look at this experience here. 4 seasons racing and just unable to get up the ladder, to have a team, surround yourself with a great team that believes in you, builds up that confidence. I think it goes a lot in building up a driver. So I think for Simons, this was just a breakout season of his true potential. There's a reason why he got the phone call when it looked like time might be up for him in his racing career. He doesn't come from a racing family, pretty much his first generation racer in his family. And for him, I think this was just really validation of what he can do. And overall, I think his very good thought is him going the next step.
Let's move on now to USF Pro 2000. Speaking of Miles Rowe, he is your champion in that series. Kiko Porto kept it interesting. He won race 1, which kept his championship hopes alive, but then in race 2, it all came to an end because Miles Rowe finished in 3rd. 3 different teams won this weekend. Nicky Johnston won race 3, Michael D'Orlando race 2, and of course Porto race 1. Joe, of course, Miles is a friend of the show. We had him on Life on the Grid this past offseason. Great to see him having so much success here in his young career. What can you tell us about what you saw from that young man this weekend in Portland?
Very much. He took this race weekend very differently than the last time he was at Portland. The last time he was at Portland, everyone thought he was going to get the championship. He was going to move on. That first race didn't work out. The second race got a little better, but then the 3rd race got in trouble at the Festival Corners. The Sheldon chicane came up, but was still short, lost the championship. That was the talk of last year. This year, USF 2000 wasn't so much a talk, but in the pros, after we saw the first race, there were people wondering, is Miles going to get the job done? I see Adam, congratulations to Miles. Cool to see an African-American win the championship. That is a very great story of Miles. And, of course, Life on the Grid on YouTube right here on the Grid Network. You can find that episode. But there was a lot of people that were thinking, is Miles going to let this one slip by again? I was at the media center. I was wondering what's going to happen in the second race. He just has to bring it home. He did that in convincing style, 3rd place. And I think the huge relief And to get all the congratulations, we saw Will Power Cindric. We know Mr. Penske, Roger Penske was there. I didn't see him go congratulate Miles, but I wouldn't be surprised if he did at some point. Miles really looked like a much better prepared driver to handle the pressure of racing for a championship and knowing there's another step up the ladder, because now he's going to a really big level Indy next year.
Yeah, Miles has really impressed me, and obviously, I think learned his lesson from last year, is a little bit more mature this season, and was able to close the deal on his championship, and I totally agree with you. He's got a bright future ahead of him. He just needs the funding and the support, and I know there have been some questions as to whether or not he was even going to be able to finish out the last couple of seasons of his career, but Penske stepped up, and other partners stepped up to make it happen. I think they got a pretty good return on an investment with Miles Rowe taking this championship here, so great to see for him, and we'll see what comes of his future. Now, we'll talk about USF Juniors a little bit here as well. Of course, they didn't race this weekend, but Nicholas Giafoni was there to pick up the championship trophy. He, of course, is the son of Felipe Giafoni. And Joe got interviews with all three of them at Portland, and each one individually. Have a look for yourselves what they had to say after clinching their championships.
Question for all three of you. You're all celebrating today championship. How soon do you start focusing on next year, on your next step of the ladder? And then what do you see as the biggest challenge next year? Is it the competition? Is it the tracks, the cars? What do you all anticipate for 2024?
Let's start with Nicholas down here. What do you expect for 2024 competition-wise as well?
Thank you for your question. Well, the biggest difference between the juniors and the 2000s are the tracks. We're going to run St. Pete, we're going to run Toronto, and also we're going to run Lucas Oil, which is an oval. So what I look forward most to are the ovals and the street courses, because they're going to be the main difference. From us graduating to 2000.
Simon, I've spent 4 years in this USF 2000 machine, so it's going to be a heartfelt goodbye to it. I've grown to love it so much, but I am really excited to get my hands on that Pro 2000 car. It's incredibly fast, and it's definitely going to be exciting. We have still one more race this weekend, so focus is still about securing that team championship perhaps, but as soon as that's over, we're looking to make that next step up. It's been a long time coming, and I'm just so thrilled to finally make the jump.
Miles, let's wrap up with you.
Yeah, I think the challenge is just adapting to every different situation. The races, they run different, the tires run different, the engine's different, competitors are different. It's just how you adapt and how fast you can, and your mental strength while doing so, how precise you can be. It's the same thing for every level. It just changes a bit, depending on which one you're going to. So I'll just do the same thing I did, in the past 2 years, and we'll see what I got.
Congratulations again on the championship. Now, one of the things you mentioned, you got an oval next year. What are your thoughts about entering an oval at Lucas Oil Speedway?
Man, I'm super excited, because finally I'm gonna have a taste of what it felt to drive an INDYCAR back when my father taught me about the ovals. So I'm really excited to be inside the car in the ovals. We've got some testing there in October, and I can't wait.
Very excited to see you in the oval next year. Now, of course, you mentioned about your father. For a lot of the new fans, of course, open wheel racing, there was a car split and everything. What are your thoughts about continuing this journey? And you're here at Portland, one of the tracks that used to host the kart tracks races back then.
Well, I just had to thank Danny Anderson and the whole Anderson promotion crew, because I wouldn't be here, I wouldn't be racing next year if it wasn't for them. We didn't have the whole budget to move up, so it's going to be a hell of a ride, I can tell you that, and I'm super excited to be racing again now in St. Pete, which is going to be awesome, Toronto, and I mean, we're going to be here next year, and it doesn't seem real.
Thank you so much for your time. Best of luck to you.
Thank you very much.
So congratulations on your championship. You mentioned you were here for about 4 years. Was there ever a time where you think like, okay, this is sort of where the ladder might come to a stop, or you just kept jigging at it? Because we know sometimes it is hard to climb up to that next step of the ladder.
Every single day, you never know what's next, and there's no guarantee that this will ever last. Even as early as January this year, I was out of racing. I had nothing left, didn't have the money to keep going, and I had all but given up. And Augie Paps gave me a phone call and said, please come out to St. Pete. Let's do this first event. We'll see how it goes, and we'll try and put the season together. But without his support, I wouldn't be here. So every single day is a reminder of how fickle the sport is and how quickly things can turn. But we're just going to keep enjoying it while it lasts.
And one of the things you mentioned, a Herbie movie got you into essentially motorsports. And of course, the family, with your family, was this something where it's, okay, we're into motorsports, or were they always sort of a little bit involved, and that's what led to the Herbie movie?
No, there was no motorsports involvement in my family at all. My dad's a pilot by trade. He always wanted me to go flying. He'll still send me flying stuff to this day, trying to get me to get in an airplane. But I was always hard stuck on going racing in cars. That was the love of mine. I wanted to be a little bit different, and racing's what I fell in love with from a very young age. It's just been a privilege to keep doing it as long as I have.
Enjoy the offseason, and best of luck to you in 2024.
Thank you so much.
Last year, Portland didn't exactly go great. When you were coming into this weekend, was it just a matter of just trying to put everything from last year behind and just focus on doing what you got to do this weekend?
Yeah, exactly, man. Just like that. Just being in the moment and being present and understanding what is the next step. What is the next step to the finish line? All the way down to, the flight, what time to put on the suit, to be, prepared in time. All the way down to how am I breaking each and every lap in the first and second races here that won me this championship. It was just about, being in the moment and not thinking too far ahead, not overthinking, because sometimes, that can weaken you, thinking too much. It's just, you just have to trust your instincts and do. And that was what this weekend was about. And yeah, we succeeded in doing such.
And as you mentioned, looking at next year, Indy NXT, some stiff competition there. We got like Hunter, Rasmussen is looking at getting the championship currently. Jamie Chadwick's over there too. Is this something where it almost feels like a dream racing with such diverse drivers in Indy NXT potentially for next year?
Yeah, man. I always knew, when I was a kid, 12 years old, that I had, what it takes. It was just about finding the pathway, utilizing it, and executing. And today on 2nd September 2023, such was executed, and now it's time to go in the INDYCAR Series and get even further along in the journey, and deliver for Roger Penske and Tim Cindric, Greg Penske, and just work, man. I'm here to work. I'm here to play the game. I'm just ready to cross many more finish lines and bring lots more hope and joy to those who support me, and those that fuel me.
Miles, congratulations once again, and have a great offseason. Looking forward to 2024.
Thank you, man. I really appreciate you.
And again, even more interviews and full recaps from the entire weekend on our YouTube channel and on our website. Thank you again, Joe, for those interviews. Now let's move on and let's talk about the Indy NXT race. It was Louis Foster taking the win, but Christian Rasmussen kept most of his championship lead there with a strong fifth-place finish. Jamie Chadwick, a career best for her in sixth, but a lot of attrition. Joe, what exactly happened from your vantage point in the first corner that saw several of the title contenders run into trouble?
Yeah, 8 cars involved in that first lap mess at the Shelton chicane. One of the big things we knew was it had rained all night long, so you didn't have the rubber, much cooler conditions. Traditionally, that would mean more grip. But what it looked like is someone from the back, mid-pack, locked it up. Next thing you know, Rasmussen got spun around, and it was just all chaos there. One of the big things I feel, especially being there, I happened to be on top of the media tower looking at getting a couple of photos, and I saw when Rasmussen was spinning. It was just pretty much wherever you could go to avoid the mess, because it was just cars all over. Jamie Chadwick, she somehow got through this, but it was a tough break for Josh Pearson. Of course, he has done World Endurance Racing. This was going to be another attempt for his progression to IndyCar for 2025. He was done for. Tough break for him because he is from the Portland area. A lot of folks were hoping to see him do well at the track. To see it end that quickly, it was a really tough break. And then we saw Hunter, who is trying to get to Rasmussen. Just tough break, 3 laps down, finishing way down. Rasmussen was able to climb up through the field, put on a great race, and I think really demonstrate he's going to be hard to beat at Laguna Seca for the last 2 races over there. I know when we talked to Hunter in the media bullpen, before we hit record, I had mentioned, great to meet you. No, the championship's a little bit out of reach. And he was right away, oh, it's not out of reach. Well, unfortunately, now it's going to be really hard for him unless Christmas Rasmussen has 2 bad race weekends in Laguna Seca. It looks like it might be game over. But it was just, this is what you anticipate at the first lap of this race. And I think just the conditions, the inexperience of the drivers with this, I know we had Scott Dixon talk about removing that chicane for the first lap. Is that something we need to do on these lower levels? I don't think so. USF, we've had some first lap incidents there too. I feel like this is open wheel racing. You're all going into INDYCAR. This isn't ARCA where you're primarily oval and then 1 or 2 road courses. This is just, I feel, the nature of racing. And when something occurs like this, especially when you have a big pack of 17 plus vehicles, good luck trying to avoid the mess.
Yeah, well, that's why I said on the pre-race show this weekend as well. This isn't the ARCA Menard Series West. I think they made the right decision in bypassing the chicane, but I think when you talk about the open wheel series and what these drivers' ultimate end goal is, which is racing in the INDYCAR series, I think you might as well have them using the chicane from the very beginning so they can get used to what it takes to get through the first corner of an INDYCAR series race. Well, Joe, thank you so much for your coverage again, and see a friend of the show, Matthew Owens, in the chat here as well, saying, hey guys, just wanted to say great job this weekend in Portland. It was a lot of fun to follow. Thank you, Matthew, for your support. It means a lot to us. Let's move on now to the ARCA Menard Series. They had a race this weekend on dirt at DuQuoin. Jesse Love denied Brent Cruz that dirt bonus. He had $34,500 on the line. If he could sweep the 2 dirt races, $14,500 paid out to the winner, and then a $20,000 bonus on the line if Cruz could get the job done. Unfortunately for him, he came up 1 spot short to his teammate. Jesse Love wins yet again. He is absolutely running away with the championship. His closest rivals, you see Andres Perez de Lara down there in 4th. A great run for Will Kimmel there in P3. William Sawalich, I believe, was the pole sitter. He fell down to P5. Not such a great night for Frankie Muniz. He got taken out in a wreck with Sean Higurani and Sean Core, but Muniz's team was able to work tirelessly to repair the car. They got him back out there about 25 laps down, but still enough to go out and gain a couple more points by getting back past Higurani and Core there and settling for a P12 finish. So, of course, the championship all but wrapped up for Jesse Love at this point. We'll see what comes of that battle for second between Perez de Lara and Muniz, even though Perez de Lara is certainly pulling ahead at this point. We'll see if Muniz can recover in these final 4 races or so to close out the year. Now let's bring Brandon Crossland back in, and let's talk about the Xfinity Series. And Brandon, I got to say, maybe it's a good thing Josh Birch isn't with us tonight. Most of our questions are going to revolve around the Cup Series drivers that were in this race, and we'll start with the race winner, Denny Hamlin. This is the 1 race a year that he comes out to do. The only reason he didn't do it last year was because he was dealing with the effects of an accident in the Cup Series, and even though he didn't have to miss a Cup race, he wanted to focus his full attention on his primary day job. But he does enjoy coming out here to Darlington, and of his 18 Xfinity Series wins, 6 of them have come at this track. So, Brandon, what is it that you think makes Denny Hamlin so good here, whether it's in an Xfinity car or a Cup car at Darlington Raceway?
I can't really figure it out, Ben. I'm still at a loss of words when it comes to what the secret sauce is for Denny Hamlin at Darlington and that Xfinity machine. But one thing's for sure, he's really good at it. Sports Clips knows that he's really good at it, and that's why they keep him coming back year after year. And I think that's one of the big incentives for him to continue that 1 Xfinity race per year in South Carolina. He now, thanks to Sportskeeda, I'm able to see that he actually holds the record for the oldest winner at Darlington in the Busch Xfinity Series since Dick Trickle's victory in September of 1998 when he was 56. Denny Hamlin's 42, and he's got, I think it's 6 of them now, Xfinity wins at Darlington. That's nothing to shake a tail at, man. He's good here. He's good at running the wall. But at the same time, a lot of people at a passing glance may think, oh, he's running like me. That's why at one point, oh, he's just running this so he can have some better, more seat time for the Cup race on Sunday. Well, that used to have been the case with the Gen 6 car in the Cup Series, but right now it's completely absolutely. From everyone in the garage, they'll tell you it's completely different animal altogether. So a completely different race. Doesn't really, I mean, maybe getting the line down in the corners, maybe a little bit of assistance there as far as running more laps with the Xfinity, but really no comparison there. But I really don't know what the secret sauce is. It's just able to run the line there in 3 and 4 and just enough of a kiss without tearing up your race car. And he's able to do it time and time again. And it's unfortunate because it was a pretty interesting race if it hadn't been for Denny Hamlin taking the upset victory. We had a lot of great drivers there as you look at the leaderboard right there. Right. Well, you see a lot of great drivers there. Austin Hill, John Hunter, Cole Custer, Josh Berry rounding out the top 5 there with him. Riley Herbst rounding out a good day with the top 10, although nothing against the team. I personally think I'm still holding with my prediction a few weeks ago that he's not going to get a victory this year. I still think it's going to elude them somehow, but I'd love to be proven wrong as always. Kyle Busch getting that top 10. We'll talk about him later. It was an overall very entertaining race. People love Xfinity at Darlington, and I'm one of those. This wasn't the most fantastic one. I guess we kind of got spoiled from the spring one, but I'd love to know what you think about it.
Yeah, well, I know NASCAR man, or not NASCAR man, NASCAR Chasm, sorry, put out a tweet saying
they feel similar, don't they?
Yeah. I'm so mad John Hunter Nemechek couldn't get by Austin Hill because it's messing with my OCD seeing it go from 19 to 21 to 20 instead of in sequential order there for the results. But, I got to tell you, maybe this will lead right into the next question here because you're right. I think there's not nearly as much overlap as there used to be. But, Denny's still coming out here. I think, again, it is an achievement. It's not nearly as impressive of an achievement as winning a Cup Series race is, but to come into a car that drives completely differently once a year and do it at a track as tough as Darlington, maybe that's why, he does it every year. He just has the secret code unlocked, particularly in these Xfinity cars. 18 wins, a third of them now on this track, by the way. A little bit inside joke here. Congratulations to Denny Hamlin on passing AJ Allmendinger on the all-time Xfinity Series wins list. If you get that reference, you're a real one. But, I don't know what it is either necessarily, but obviously, he just has this track unlocked, and particularly in Xfinity, he got the job done again this weekend. More power to him. Driver who couldn't get the job done in any of his allotted Xfinity starts this year was Kyle Busch, and it's kind of the complete opposite of what we've come to expect from Kyle Busch in the Xfinity Series. The last time he was racing here, he swept his 5 allotted starts. This year, he didn't even get to run one of them because the race got postponed to Monday, and he ended up deciding there's no sense in running 900 miles in a single day. Of his 4 races that he actually did this year, did not win any of them driving for Colleague Racing. So, Brandon, what's your reaction to Kyle Busch looking actually human here in the Xfinity Series, not winning a race? And do you think that that's part of it too, being away from the series and driving the next-gen car, getting used to that? I know he does the 5 truck races a year still, but does that play a role in maybe why he wasn't able to break through for at least 1 win this year?
I don't know. I love the way you place the question. First of all, it very much was superhuman to put up the stats he has in the Xfinity Series. But yeah, I don't know why Kyle Busch hasn't found victory lane at all with Colleague, and I can't really put my finger on it. I mean, it's a change in manufacturer. That's one component to it, I guess. But no longer really driving for himself, maybe another thing. But that was just in trucks. We didn't really have that here recently. But I don't know. I don't know what to do about that. I am surprised he wasn't able to win any of them because that's a pretty good car. We've seen some impressive results with some other folks in the 10 machine. I just don't know what to do about it.
Yeah, I know he only had his Xfinity program for a couple of years and never won driving for himself, although his brother Kurt did in 2012. So I don't know if it's just Gibbs was giving him their absolute best, or if it's taking time to get used to a new program. But you say that he won his second ever race with Richard Childress Racing on the Cup side of things, and very nearly won the first. He was the leader at mile number 500 in the Daytona 500. So Kyle, I think, is somebody who can adapt very quickly. We've seen what he's able to do in trucks and Xfinity over the years, only coming out here a few times a year. I would have bet the farm on him winning at least one race. I'm very surprised that he was unable to do that. But I suppose it made things a little bit more interesting for the series regulars, giving them an opportunity to race against Kyle Busch when he wasn't just 5 seconds out ahead of the field, walking away with a clean sweep of wins in his allotted starts this year. So it'll be interesting to see if Kyle comes back. I fully expect him to at this point. I'm sure, that he's had the fire lit underneath him and wants to taste Xfinity Series victory lane again, which he didn't get to do this year. But it is interesting. He's not driving a terrible car by any means. INDYCAR is certainly capable of winning races with that team. But we'll see what happens and see if he can put an end to this dry spell in the Xfinity Series in 2024 if he decides to come back. Now, let's talk about the series regulars real quick here, Brandon. If we still have you here, I think there we go. Let's talk.
I'm sorry.
So yeah, no, it's fine. I saw you looking down. I wasn't sure if you.
Oh yeah, I was just doing some research for this question here.
No worries.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the series regulars because we did have some in the field this weekend, despite Denny Hamlin taking the win and stealing the headlines along with Kyle Busch. We're coming up on the cutoff race here for the playoffs. Who do you think has the best chance of taking a walk-off win at Kansas to secure a spot in the postseason?
Okay, just got my research done, so I got my answer. First of all, for Kansas, I've got to go with kind of our big three in the points right now: John Hunter Nemechek, Austin Hill, Justin Allgaier. I don't think you can go wrong with any of those, especially John Hunter Nemechek. I think they're when it comes to Kansas, they're going to be on fire and just get right back into their swing of things and grab another victory in advance. But if I had a wild card option, which this is what I needed the research for, because I was guessing on it, but I wanted to confirm it for you Grid Network fans. I wanted to make sure that Brandon Jones' first victory was at Kansas Speedway in the Xfinity Series for Joe Gibbs. I do remember that because I remember the reaction from Kamikaze Games after that the evening following. And that's just burned in my memory. So thank you for that, Kamikaze. But yeah, that was 2017.
19, I think, right?
19. Wow. Okay. Yeah, 2019, the Kansas Lottery 300. So there's the research. Yeah, if I had a wild card choice, I'd say you're going to get Brandon Jones, who is not locked in the playoffs. He is 2 behind the cutoff line, 79 points to the bad. So, but this is their cutoff race. So Xfinity goes a little bit later. So that would be my wild card. Someone who can just get back on track, although it's with a different team. That's where he found his success at the beginning. And yeah, thank you, Matthew, for the backup there. Tremendous at Kansas, 2 wins, 4 top 10s in his last 5 Kansas starts.
You took the words right out of my mouth, Brandon. That's my answer as well. Brandon Jones, I think, is definitely a dark horse contender this weekend. And maybe that's not even fair to him because, like Matthew said, he's a 2-time winner here at this track. I know it certainly hasn't been the season that he would have wanted stepping into that number 9 car based on what Noah Gregson's done in that car the last couple of years, to only have a couple of top 5s and a handful of top 10s and not be really, to be frank, anywhere near the playoff conversation over the last several weeks. He definitely needs a win, and we'll see if that can, revitalize that number 9 team and bring forward some better efforts from them if they were to get into the playoffs. But this is their last shot here. And it really couldn't come in a better track for Brandon Jones, where he got his first win, where he got his 3rd win as well and followed it up the following season. I think if you're looking for a potential surprise winner, so to speak, look no further than Brandon Jones. He certainly has a good car, and it's a good track for him. So we'll see what he can do.
Kansas is really special, man. It's not really like Chicago land was, because although they look very similar, it's Kansas. I'm not a driver, but it just feels very tightly wound. Like it looks like there's plenty of room, but it feels like once they get out there, it's such a tightly wound track that if you don't have your line right, you're in trouble. And I think Brandon Jones is one of those guys that has figured that out based on his stats.
No doubt. All right, well, we'll do one more question here, kind of an open segment. I'll bring Joe Samniego back in for this one. Joe, I certainly want your thoughts on this as well as somebody who was media this weekend at the track. Kyle Petty and Bubba Wallace were in the headlines all week with some comments that Kyle first made in the middle of the week regarding Bubba Wallace declining an interview and talking about media obligations for these drivers. Kyle essentially said that as a driver, Bubba was obligated to fulfill those media obligations, and then went a step further to say if he's unwilling or unable to do that, maybe he's too mentally fragile for what it takes to be in this sport. Bubba Wallace fired back in his pre-race interview last night, talking about how he was just there to fulfill his media obligations and joking that he was too mentally fragile, and then saying now on to the fill in the blank that matters there in his interview. I believe it was with Dave Burns with NBC Sports. So, Brandon, I'll start with you first. I know you and I both have a tremendous amount of respect for the voice that Kyle Petty is in the sport and that he's not afraid to speak his mind and say how he feels. But do you think he crossed the line with these comments on Bubba Wallace? But then on top of that, do you think Bubba Wallace was maybe a little bit out of line taking it as far as he did in his pre-race interview?
Look, and in all respect to Kyle Petty, I'm going to start like this. And I'm going to say this, because you got to start a Kyle Petty argument with that. With all respect to Kyle Petty, love the guy. And I love the whole Petty family. And I love Kyle Petty's guitar playing, all that stuff. It's great stuff he does outside the track. And when I see him make comments like this to drivers like Bubba Wallace that have fewer years behind their belt in the cup level, of course, everyone wants to point the finger that Kyle Petty only had 8 career wins and therefore his opinions don't matter, and that he only was brought up because of his namesake. But I think he was approaching this topic. I think his intentions were good. I think he was coming at this as a father-son kind of perspective. Like, I'm trying to help you out here. Like, I want what's best for you here. Like, I want to help you along here with this scenario, because maybe he's felt that before. I don't know. But the way he executed it he lost me at the name calling. It no longer helps with the name calling. So that happened. And then so Bubba has a chance here to respond in 2 different ways, to just kind of take it, fulfilling, like we talked about before, like, okay, I'm fulfilling my media obligations, maybe poke some fun at the comment, but then move on. That's the real maturity mark for a Cup driver who maybe has figured it out. Like, okay, this is the best for my career. This is the best for my team. This is the best for the onlooker's perspective of the industry as a whole. What kind of professionals are we? Gloves off. We have fun. We fight sometimes, but the overall image of the sport, we have these kinds of characters in all other sports too. So I'm not just going to single it out, and I don't want to run off into a tangent, but it went wrong where Kyle Petty called some names and said fragile mind, not able to handle it and stuff. Well, Bubba also wanted to clap back and give his, name calls as well. And now that explicitive is over, we'll get to the, all of that's just a bunch of mess. And I don't think Kyle Petty is at Stephen A's status, and I don't want him to be. A lot of people think he might be, but I don't think that's the issue there. I think, in summary, I think Kyle Petty wants the best for these people he calls out. And I think he's really consistent, which I know Ben loves. And now I will shut up and I want to hear Ben. Well, actually, no, I want to hear Joe.
Well, yeah, let's go to Joe first on this.
Yeah.
Joe, I want your perspective. A weird comment from Matthew Owens first, saying he thinks Kyle was spot on about the media obligations. You can't give a 30-second answer before you go out and qualify at Daytona for 60 seconds. And then adding Bubba Wallace has a ton of fans that want to hear from him, even if it's a boring, nothing answer like Chase Elliott always gives. Come on, it can't be that difficult. Joe, I want to get your perspective as somebody that was doing media this weekend at the track. When a driver declines an interview, I don't know if you've ever had that happen to you, but what would your reaction be? And do you think the drivers that you want to talk to, what's their level of obligation to give you the time of day to answer any questions that you might have of them?
Definitely, it's something where I would say when it comes to media obligation, especially when you're in this level and you're in the playoffs, you want those 16 drivers getting their face out there talking. They have a huge media day event. I believe it was Wednesday for all the Cup Series drivers in the playoffs. It's a big obligation. Get into the sport, top level stock car race in the United States. The media is going to be there on your good days, Your bad days, the days you're more stressed out, the days you're more relaxed. I do think at the end, Kyle Petty was trying to just say, look, this is just part of the game. And Kyle Petty, let's remember, the son of the king. Can you imagine how quite often he felt the pressure of
Right.
you're 190 plus wins away from tying your father? Will that ever happen? And he probably got tired of that and had to put it behind. I think he, like what Brandon said, this was just trying to give a little bit of that. Look, this is just part of the deal. The media is going to be there. And we've seen at times too. I recall, I believe it was Nashville last year or 2 years ago. There was an incident in which the INDYCAR drivers did not go to the media bullpen. Jenna Fry from Associated Press called it out because they were all there. They got their questions. And when none of them showed up, they were all on a tweet seeing leaving the facility. It is upsetting. And it doesn't look good for the sport because the sport, when you go to Portland, like for this weekend, NBC is there. The Associated Press is there. Of course, they'll try to organize to make sure they're covered. Then we'll get next, and then local media. It's a big deal because this is sort of the opportunity to bring your star power to represent the sport. And I feel I get it. Bubba Wallace, he has a lot on his plate going on. He trying to get into the playoffs of Daytona. Wasn't exactly in the mood to be interviewed, have a camera in front of him and say, that's part of the obligation. If you don't make it in the next round, who's going to be there as soon as you climb out of the car? NBC, Dave Burns, Matt Snyder. If you advance, who's going to be out there? Them again. This is just part of their territory. And I feel I would have to agree that, I think Kyle Petty did not mean ill will. If anything, he's just calling it like it is. Like, look, you're in NASCAR. You're a good enough driver. This is one of those things you're going to have to deal with. The media will always be there. I just don't think Bubba exactly handled that well once he, like you said, Brandon, I'm here for the media obligation, not to get in trouble. Move on, answer the questions, focus on the big picture. Because the big picture right now for Bubba Wallace, go out there, perform, try to get the win in Kansas, get to the next round of playoffs. Because he will love to be on the front stretch again at Kansas and then see the media and talk about his win. So he really got to move on. And I think this is just one of those deals as part of the media right here and then going to the track. We get it. The drivers get busy. I know for Miles, in fact, he had so many interviews. We were lucky to get the 2 questions with him. But there were some other folks that, sorry, we ran out of time. It's just the way it goes. And especially in this level, the playoffs, you wouldn't want a champion to be like, hey, I'm too stressed out before the championship race in the Final Four. I don't want to talk to anybody. Yeah. That's not part of it.
And I just want to say really quickly, like, to say that because of his stress level, he's not able to fulfill his media obligation, that's almost as if to say, like, he's the only one on the grid that's stressed out. Like, he is not – no one on the grid is special enough to where they reserve the right where they don't have to fulfill – their obligations, especially at the cup level. Like, come on now. Like, you have some, I don't know, just, it's just a lack of humbleness. I don't know. Like, yes, do you not think that Corey LaJoie, that BJ McLeod is going through some stress here? I mean, maybe, but they still get up there. Chase Elliott probably hates everything at some point, but he's still going to say, yeah, car was good. Just a lot of stuff to work on. You're going through the, just give him a little bit. And I know Bubba poked fun at the time, like 30 seconds of time or something, but like, please do it. You are in the elite of motorsport society. Like, just do your job. It's part of your job. It's expected of you. It's expected of you.
And Kyle Busch, we know sometimes when he gets angry and he storms off, doesn't want to talk to anybody, or he gives those interviews where he just says, nope, yep, what do you think? People don't like that either.
That's better than nothing.
Better than nothing. But you got to do it. And I think, too, it's the media's role to get the story. I think the best example I could think of, 2021, James Hinchcliffe, when he went out first lap, first corner to Shelton chicane, and questions about where is he going to go next year. He might be out. We approached him. He he wasn't in a good mood to interview, but he still interviewed. He gave us his honest answers. He was upset, you could tell, but it was an interview that was very memorable. And at the end, after he finished his answer, James Hinchcliffe, thank you so much for your time. Just nodded his head, but you could tell he wasn't exactly thrilled to see our little microphone and camera there saying, hey, we're here for an interview. But he gave it the time, and for his fans as well, too. They got to hear their favorite drivers speak.
Yeah, and I don't care what the ugly side of social media says about Bubba Wallace. He's a talented race car driver. He just a lot of his decisions like this just really disappoint me, and because I want best for him. I do. It just I wish he would learn some wisdom and cooperate with the system.
Well, the first thing I have to say is, can we stop making fun of Kyle Petty's wins record? Like, I don't know what the exact number is. I think it's somewhere around 3,000 drivers have set foot in a Cup car and run at least one race. Do you know how many have won more than 8 races, which is Kyle's career total? 67. Kyle's tied for 68th on the all-time wins list. I just looked it up with Ryan Blaney at 8 wins. He is in the top, whatever that is, the top third of the top 1% of Cup Series drivers all time by race wins. So let's not pretend that he isn't qualified to have an opinion and have a voice in this sport. It just drives me crazy when people bring up his wins record as if that's, first of all, as if it's a bad wins record, because 8 is, like I said, more than the vast majority of Cup drivers can say, but as if that in any way disqualifies him from speaking his mind on topics like this. It just drives me crazy. So I wish we could stop that. But on this particular issue, I don't think Kyle was wrong. I agree with what you guys were saying. I agree with what Matthew was saying. I think you are obligated once you get to that level to at least give the bare minimum to the media, give them a quick 1 or 2 question interview, and then you can move on. I didn't love the fact that he called somebody who has been very open about his battles with depression. And I mean, we all know what Bubba Wallace has been through the last 3 or 4 years or so, and all the social unrest that's gone on in the country, just generally speaking, and Bubba's been at the forefront of a lot of that. I can't imagine what he's been through. So to call somebody that's been open with a battle of depression mentally fragile, I think was a little bit over the line. I wasn't a fan of that. But his overall point, I don't think was wrong. I don't think it's bad to say, look, you're a driver in the Cup Series. The least you can do is give NBC or MRN or, an outlet like, us or Front Stretch or whoever it is. If we're there, if we're credentialed media, we have the right to interview you. You are obligated to at least give us the time of day to say that. Now, what Bubba said on Sunday night, again, he's entitled to his opinions and all that. I have no problem with him speaking his mind as well. But I think if he had just joked with, NBC really quickly and said, well, I'm just here fulfilling my media obligations, and kind of laughed it off and then gone into his answer, I think that would have gotten a chuckle out of everybody. I think that would have been fine. It was that he continued to go on about it and then dropped an expletive on national television. I know they weren't on big NBC this weekend. I know that matters to some people for FCC violations by the book or whatever. But that I feel like, to your point that you were saying, Brandon, I think it's stuff like that is why Bubba Wallace isn't more popular than he is. And listen, people have their opinions on what happened at Talladega in 2020 and how that was handled on NASCAR's end and on Bubba Wallace's end and the aftermath of that. And I don't think anybody's opinion is going to change on that at this point. And what he has to deal with and what he still has to deal with from what stemmed from that incident is absolutely awful. And of course, we don't condone any of that. But again, it's not the first time that he's given an interview like this, or he's, said some things that I think fans don't like or they take the wrong way. And I just wish that he'd have a little bit more self-control when he's in a position like this. And I think that would go a long way towards trying to win over some of his doubters and some of his haters and saying, I'm here, I'm a talented race car driver, and I'm going to put this behind me and go out and put my best foot forward. He's going back to a track he's won at last year with Kansas coming up. I think it was a great opportunity for him to show that maturity. And unfortunately, I think he came up a little bit short there.
Yeah. In my opinion, I think it's this culture that says you are free to be your true, authentic self that condones this sort of behavior sometimes. Like, I need to be who I am, like, even if it is like, no, you're just being rude. You're not contributing to society by being your true, authentic self in that sense. No, you're being very rude and not being professional. Like, that hasn't changed.
Yes. And thank you both for your thoughts on it. And I think the one thing that is great about conversations like this is that, we're open, we're honest, we're having this discussion, trying to see it from both Kyle Petty's vantage point and Bubba Wallace's vantage point, and not just going back and forth with name calling and insults on Twitter like a lot of people were doing on Sunday night. And I think that's what we need more of when situations like this come up. So we'll read a couple more comments.
But
here.
I am ready, Ben.
Well,
just say the word. I'll fire away.
There you go. Yeah. Well, we'll read a couple more comments here, and then we'll leave it at that. Matthew Owen saying, I'm always going to defend the media in situations like this. They're not doing this for nothing. They're doing their jobs just as much as the drivers are doing theirs. And again, I think that's why it's valuable to have a voice like Kyle Petty, because Kyle Petty's been on both sides of it. A lot of Jeff Burton, Dale Earnhardt Jr. in the booth for NBC and Parker Kligerman on pit road for NBC. Those guys know what it's like to be on the other end of it. And now I think have a different perspective working in media. When they're going for interviews, I think, their voices aren't, irrelevant or not worth listening to when it comes to circumstances like this. Adam Lummery's closing us out here saying, I'll agree 110% with everybody. Let's leave that there. Let's talk about the one shining moments from this weekend. I imagine there are multiple shining moments. Joe, you better than anybody, I think, have some lined up. You were at the track. You saw a lot of great things happen this weekend. What's the one thing that stood out to you from your weekend at PIR or from anything else that happened in the Encore series this weekend?
I would say I have a couple from PIR. Simon Sykes, what a story. A lot of us have heard the story before. You enter to motorsports, you don't exactly have the sponsorship to fund it, and you're just trying to make it by. He has that story, but the other element too, he comes from a family that's not involved with motorsports. What does that mean? That means you don't exactly have the connections on where to start. Where do you go? It's almost socially the blind leading the blind and then trying to get to that next level. And at times, like he said, it looked like it might be stuck. It might be ending here. Then he gets the opportunity with Paps, the 22-year-old kid from Atlanta, Georgia. Great season. Got his name out there in the championship, and now is looking for the next level at USF Pro. That was a big one shining moment. And then I'll also give my other shining moment as well too, the Moto3 race. If you have not seen Moto3, and I would even say Moto2 is just as good as well too, these riders, you have so many riders out there, and they're racing pretty cleanly. We only had a couple incidents of a rider losing control, sliding out. We know motorcycle racing is such a dangerous sport, but these kids are phenomenal at doing what they're doing out there on the track, racing with respect, and these pack racing. I got to give it up to them. Those are my shining moments.
I love the combination that race fans get on this weekend with the Italian Grand Prix, Portland, and then Darlington Raceway. Such tracks that are great at taking the new technology of all these of these disciplines of motorsport and taking them back on their old circuits and just bringing the grit back, even with the new equipment. And we kind of saw that all around. I love this weekend, and I like the combination. And I particularly like Alpha Prime's Richard Petty Enterprise throwbacks this weekend with Raja Carruth. And I forgot the other one. Someone help me out. 40. Do I have an assistance here? Anybody? It's Raja Carruth. Ryan Ellis. Yep. Ryan Ellis and Raja Carruth. Okay. Yeah. We had the John Andretti throwback and also the Adam Petty throwback with Alpha Prime Racing. I know it's not the throwback weekend anymore, but I like that some teams still try to participate. I like that it's not the throwback weekend because I like that we can have present NASCAR at Darlington on Southern 500 weekend and make more history. But yeah, I like to see the throwback sometimes. Some people kind of breaking the rules, and those are some really solid throwback paint schemes from Alpha Prime.
Yeah, I know Tom and Joe was very excited when he recognized that he had the numbers 43, 44, and 45 and was like, oh my goodness, we could actually pull something like this off here. So I'm glad they got the opportunity to do it, whether it was throwback weekend or not. Great to see those schemes out there again. I want to give a call to Miles Rowe. Like I mentioned, such a great young talent and somebody who I think has an incredible future lined up for him. Just needs the opportunities to come his way to get him there. But he proved this weekend, clinching the USF Pro 2000 championship, that he's a name to watch over the next several years. Don't be surprised if you see him on the starting grid of the Indianapolis 500 in a few years' time. He is sensational, and he did a fantastic job closing the deal this weekend and winning the championship. A bright future ahead of that young man for sure. That is my one shining moment for this evening's show, and that's it for this evening's show. Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to subscribe to the Grid Network here on YouTube. Join us on our journey to 1,000 subscribers and beyond. Thank you so much for 700 and helping us get that far. And follow us on all of our social media platforms, X, that's Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Twitch, LinkedIn, Threads, and most importantly, like I said, right here on YouTube. If you really liked what you saw tonight, you can take a few minutes after the show to invest in our Patreon. Join Colin Deschelle, Mark, Robin, and David in investing in the Grid Network to help keep us on the air throughout 2023 and help get us to the track a little bit more often, just like Joe was this weekend. Our long-term goal of $500 per month will allow us to begin doing just that on a more regular basis, and that only expands our coverage for you, the viewers. Or if you'd rather make a one-time donation, you can visit Buy Me a Coffee. Join these fine folks, buy a coffee for your favorite on-air talent. Any amount will help us continue to grow our motorsports media outlet. Or you can also choose the super chat options, which we now have enabled on YouTube as well, if you'd rather make a one-time donation that way. Now on Wednesday, don't miss Grid Tonight with Josh Birch, Kobe Lambus, and Matt White. And of course, stay tuned for a return to a little bit more regular Grid Live schedule this upcoming weekend. As always, Brandon, Joe, any final thoughts before we sign off for this evening?
Joe?
I would say overall, very exciting race weekend. Glad it was a safe race weekend. We know MotoGP had a couple injuries, but safety, and a big thank you to all the volunteers at all levels for making even the local short track all the racing possible safely.
Yeah, well, champions crowned at INDYCAR, but we still got to go to Laguna Seca for the final honors, and we go to Kansas for the middle race of the round of 16.
I want to give another shout out to Alex Palou. I know it's not an Encore series, but you just can't say enough about the job that he's done this year, the dominance that he's had. I know he's had some off-track legal stuff going on, and we hope that gets resolved, and those situations are able to resolve themselves here. But to clinch the championship around early, that's something that I didn't think I'd see again for a very long time. It hasn't been done in 18 years in the IndyCar series as we know it, 16 years in American open wheel racing overall. It's a tremendous, tremendous achievement. I know that there's not double points anymore. That certainly helps his case here, but he has had a phenomenal season. His worst finish is 8th all year. What more can you say? He's been absolutely fantastic. So we'll see what happens at Laguna Seca this weekend. Even though the championship's all wrapped up, I'll still be watching. For Joe Samniego and Brandon Crossland, I'm Ben Schneider. Thank you so much for watching us here tonight. We'll see you next time right here on the Grid Network.
Thank you for watching us right here on YouTube. Be sure to subscribe and check out some of our other videos, including Life on the Grid, where we interview folks from the motorsports industry. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.